Uh, Very glad that I'm getting this opportunity to speak with you. Uh, First things first, I think, you know, though you have mentioned my role in the company, I think I'm speaking not for the company, so it's not a statements or observations or comments that I make are my personal comments. They're not to be attributed to the company. That's not a company view on this. It's my view more out of a concerned citizen and a professional who has been on this field. Secondly, I think if you look at defense manufacturing, the field is so very vast. I think, and there are so many strategic experts, defense experts who have done, who have huge service behind them. I do not claim to have any of those, any of that stature. I think you have to look at the observation that I make from the point of view that if there is a large room and I peek inside the room from one of the windows. So that is the truth as far as I am concerned. So I'm merely stating my observations, my fact. I mean, that's my view of the truth. Maybe it is different, and if it is different for the betterment, it's all good for us. So no, I think that's one. Secondly, it is probably my first time, maybe, or in the recent time, I think it's just about 2 months that we have been getting used to webinars and speaking to a screen in front of us, and not actually getting any audience feedback. So I'll encourage and request all of you to be as interactive as possible. Please populate the chat box as much as with whatever questions, suggestions that you may have. I would like to keep it interactive. I will request my hosts, Gopalji, to keep looking at the chat box, and if he finds there is an irrelevant question, I think it's let's feel free to to bring it to my attention so that I can address it right there. Secondly, as I just mentioned, companies or organizations derive immense pleasure when they say that we are producing for defense. There is a great deal of nationalistic feeling. There's a great feeling that, and indeed, that's a right feeling one should have. But you can sell furniture to defense organizations. You can sell stores to defense organizations. So we are not actually speaking about that. We are generally speaking about capital equipment. We're talking about weapon systems, and within those, with limited exposure that I've had during my professional life. So we will restrict only to that. Some quick points. My view is being called a defense manufacturer adds much more to the brand than to the balance sheet. All said and done, I think though India, we keep hearing about what percentage of the annual budget is spent on defense and how is it growing over a period of time. With increasing size of economy, how even a lesser percentage or the same percentage actually means a lot more. But all said and done, if you were to look at the overall scope of induction of new defense equipment, I think it is too little. And that's where I think the first of the challenge that any domestic defense manufacturer will have comes from that thing. Secondly, if you look at the entire capital equipment also, so in that entire capital equipment, you will have land systems, naval systems, aero systems, you will have different platforms. So, if I were to give an example, maybe 20 years back, Doordarshan had nearly 100% of viewership, or maybe even 80%. Today, channels have about 2 or 3% of viewership, and they feel they're great. It's great. Similar is the context when you look at what individual Indian companies are doing to defense. It may be large from the company's point of view. It is significant, of course, from the company's point of view, but in the overall context, it is actually a very, very small number. I normally joke that even a third or fourth positioned detergent maker will have a larger turnover than many of the large defense manufacturers. And the reason I think are very many. I think one of the reasons is that money has been a constraint for us. There is no doubt. Second, I think government being the only buyer and with limited money, they would buy in waves. So, if a sizable portion of budget is committed to, let's say, a particular type of airborne asset, then others will be will be divided of that budget, and that becomes a challenge. Continuity, therefore, is a major problem. Now, let's put it in this context. Let's say if I was a defense, let's say I was a tank manufacturer, I would need the entire setup, all the capabilities, the entire infrastructure, technology. I must also invest in new technology in order that I can produce the next version of the tank. And when government is the only buyer, and when the orders dry up, what do I do? And that challenge is today faced by all Indian manufacturers. Therefore, one way to do this, there aren't any very many pure play defense organizations. Defense divisions are by and large small efforts, small business units of a large company. More often than not, the other businesses support the defense business in terms of cash flow, in terms of stability. You have famine and feast. You get a large order, and when you execute it, thereafter you have a situation of underutilization. And this, if I were to say, is the biggest bane for domestic Indian manufacturers. They crave for continuity, they crave for size, and if these two things were to be available, I think there would be so much. As much as it is impact on the brand, it would be also on the balance sheet. This is the reason you will also see, a new word being coined these days, saying that DNA, in the sense defense, nuclear, and aerospace. So what organizations end up doing is they have these capabilities and capacity, and then when one sector goes down, they go and seek orders from the other sector and try and stay afloat. So I think it will be still a very long time for us before we can become pure play defense organizations, before we can become product suppliers and into a serial production. Of course, there would be some categories, ammunition, for example, ammunition, which is a consumable item, if I were to say, or mines or something like that. Of course, you can have lines, and but otherwise, capital equipment, which has a certain life cycle. Of course, from the value mining point of view, organizations will have to then, after having sold the equipment, they will have to look at life cycle support and supplying of spares and maintenance and so on and so forth. But come to look at it from the point of view of the company, if you have already spent a whole lot building the infrastructure in your shops and people, how do you keep them gainfully engaged becomes a very, very big challenge. So you have, in order to be a defense manufacturer, you must, table stakes are that you must have the infrastructure in place. Government being the only buyer who purchases is done by tendering. And, this you have an approach where you call winner takes it all. One who wins the order has taken the entire work, and the others don't have any share of work. Now, somebody may ask whether isn't this a common phenomenon? Aren't tenders order of the day in any and everything that you do? For example, let's say large civil construction programs, or large road construction programs. All of them are tender driven, but there is a difference. If you look at that value chain, you have a set of core companies which are, let's say, principal employers who do the core designing and who are the prime contractors who bid for the work, but their fixed cost structure is very, very limited, they're very lean. They have the technology, they have the wherewithal, they have the project management skills. They don't have very many fixed costs. The manpower is by and large completely variabilized. So when you need manpower, you acquire them, and when the project is finished, you shake hands and you move on. And therefore, there is no burden of that manpower continuously. Look at construction machinery. once again, you have an ecosystem where there are very many, maybe mid-sized organizations who own these assets and lease them from time to time to one organization or the other. So if you want to look at the perspective of sweating of assets, these assets in a typical construction machinery, they are forever gainfully engaged, because if not company A, they will be engaged by company B, and that works out very well. It is not so for defense manufacturing, because when you bid, you expect the companies to have the table stake. You must have under your shed a certain minimum manufacturing capability, capacity, certain people and qualifications, and so on and so forth. And that's why I think we must understand the challenges private sector defense manufacturers face is, if five of them have bid for a contract and one of them wins, the other four are virtually out of work for that period. And that should tell us how challenging it is. Secondly, let's draw parallel between let's say space research. Now, space research and nuclear research and nuclear power programs. These organizations, the quality, the design is with themselves. They own the design. The quality inspection, quality surveillance is also under the same roof. So there is somewhere, there is there is a unity of command. There is some common purpose, some common agenda for both the purchaser, the project manager, the designer, and the quality engineer to come together and execute the program. It is not so in defense, and maybe there are good reasons for it, but the reason is you have multifarious third-party inspection agencies, all government organizations on their own, pretty capable, well-staffed, well-distributed, but then you have a challenge, because how would they know if organization in Mumbai or Hyderabad has won a large contract? Their manpower is distributed based on the, the, the work they have done so far. When a new organization wins a large order, they also have to accommodate. And then invariably there is a delay in this process. And that becomes another challenge. Okay, so when in any typical government-driven tender contract, you will have innumerable reasons for you to go back to the customer, seek approval for drawings, for processes, seek approval for changes, and same thing. You have to offer any inspection. You have to go to the third party, give them a call. They will insist on giving them a plan. Then they will expect that we stick to the plan, and there may be a shift here and there, and it then causes huge logistical challenges to everybody along the chain. And therefore, instead of feeling good about it, and people end up doing more logistic management, follow up, and these things like that. Second issue is my perspective is we are still in a quality control mode. While all these organizations, they're called quality assurance organizations, and of course, there is a process of reform taking place. People are looking at how to really make them quality assurance organizations and not quality control organizations. The current maturity in the system makes it that it's more quality control than quality assurance. Maybe they are right in their from their point of view, because the kind of companies that they are dealing with, some very large and mature and very sophisticated quality assured execution capabilities, and some not so, and therefore they have to provide for the common minimum requirement, and therefore that they are geared up that. But eventually, all these kind of approaches, this kind of perspective, actually builds delay in the system. So, as I said some time back, companies tend to therefore call DNA, in the sense we deal with defense, nuclear, and aerospace. It is good for branding, but maybe the core reason behind it is in order that we are able to become sustainable by looking at all these three sectors. I think it's that's more of an approach like that. So going forward, what would help Indian defense manufacturers to really come come of age and become very large and big. I think one thing that I said that we have to move away from the project mode uh, to production mode. Very, very rarely we have serial production opportunities, and when we have, we obviously grab them. But if you have to make launches, maybe 10 launches over a period of 3 years, I think it's far from being mass manufacturing or production. And then once that is over, you have to, of course, you have the responsibility to do after sales service and life cycle support and training and handholding and all that. But then till the order is repeated, maybe 5 or 6 years down the line, you are actually you have to retain that knowledge. And that becomes another challenge. So what is the solve for this? So if you were to sort of come out of this vicious circle, if I may say, of uncertainty of orders, small value of orders, one way to do it is provide continuity, and that can be done by identifying, because country would need a whole lot of equipment. We have to identify one or two manufacturers. See, once again, it's a very typical shortage mentality, because today nobody has order, everybody is running after all types of orders, and that can never be a good situation. Where would there be a learning curve? How will you have more productive processes deployed for each of the organization? You will always be in a project mode. So if you were to sort of counterintuitive thinking to do that would be to sort of spread the work between not more than two organizations for any type of product and support them. By all means, hold them accountable. By all means, figure out, get into a contract to see, whether the pricing is correct, and the price discovery mechanism can be established. I mean, tender is one process, but other would be, cost audits and something like that. Eventually, I think if you have this spirit of partnership, I think there will be a greater opportunity for the company to move forward, and there will be more businesses, more mature businesses, more businesses with long-term view, uh, and then that will be generally good. Second thing, what I mentioned about QS and sort of from quality surveillance, from quality control to quality assurance. I think that is the second move that we have to do. We now hear that there is a policy which will identify vendors as green channel vendors, and also will assign self-certification rights to people. I think it's a welcome policy. We have to see how fast we can do it. Third aspect is more philosophical. I think we have to see all these capabilities and infrastructure as national assets. Therefore, that must be our overall program. Today, if every organization ends up investing in all type of equipment, then there is excess capacity. Let's say very, very fine laser measurement instrument. Now, if every organization ought to have it, as is the condition today, then you have a challenge that these assets are not sweated enough, and therefore the cost of manufacturing goes up. On the other hand, if you have a maybe a utopian, but finally if you have a very collaborative spirit, and people quite like what I just mentioned in large civil contract, you have very many asset holders who come together, execute a program, a project, and then go away. The risk sharing gets distributed, and that is a great model going forward. This is something that I think industry forum has been, people from industry have been sort of articulating and escalating time and again. It's not that powers that be do not understand the merit. Probably they have their own challenges, and that's where something what I said, that we have to look at it from my point of view. I'm probably not aware of the challenges that would come if what I'm proposing is followed. So that's the reason why we have seen great deal of excitement, much media hype, right from the days when Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam actually said that we have to reverse this ratio of 70-30, 70 imports and 30 domestic to the other way around. I think a lot of time has passed, almost 20 years, but not much has been done. I think so. as a concerned citizen, this is not a criticism, but a critique. There are more ways than one that we can actually, look at how well an organization is performing. I think we should look at the value add. Uh, I'm just taking an example. It's by no way, I'm not singling out this organization, but take any DPSU. Let's say take HAL for example. If you want to look at HAL's turnover, we have to also look at what is the cost or what is of the input that is coming in. What is the value add that happens in HAL? Value add will include, of course, employee salaries and all that kind of thing also. And that shall be the true contribution that we would say, because other money is essentially if you're buying out. I'm talking about imports. If you're buying from domestic industry, I think that's still part of Indian manufacturing. Therefore, that can be that should be promoted. In fact, so that's another way that we have to look at how we can increasingly improve this contribution of domestic into the overall capital budget. There is a great deal of excitement, branding involved. If you say that, okay, I'm a platform maker, so everybody wants to become a submarine maker, or launcher maker, or missile maker, and all that. I think that's another thing that we have to sort of really shed. Doing great work, and this is something that I think we have to learn a lot from Israelis. A whole lot of them coming together, actually all medium scale industries, privately owned companies, all coming together under umbrella of three large OEMs, so to say. But the work actually gets done by MSMEs. And that's another model that we have to look at. There is no shame in not being a platform maker as long as you're a great system supplier. And if we, and because that's the right kind of fit for of ambition. I'm not saying that we don't have to be ambitious. Of course, we have to be ambitious. Eventually, we should also have organizations which are as large as Boeing or Lockheed Martin or Thales or Raytheon. Of course, time will come, but that will not happen in a day. And probably it will not happen organically. It will probably happen inorganically. But it's important to really be great at whatever system that you're making. Make it well, take it to global scale, innovate. And if you do that, probably your turnover will remain small, but you will become a great player. And that's something, if I were to suggest as to what we should do, I think not everybody should say that, okay, I want to become a platform maker. For giving me this opportunity, I think it's, as I mentioned, I'm honored, and it was an onerous talk. It was pretty, big shoes to fill. And I must thank, my senior from engineering college, Colonel Tripathi ji, because on whose insistence, because I was, in fact, when he first mentioned, I I wanted to escape, but then he said, no, we must do that. And that's why here I am. So thank you for giving me this opportunity. I hope your audiences have liked it, and I'll be happy to receive any questions, any unanswered questions. Maybe if you don't have time now, it's okay. You can mail it to me, and then we can see how to speak.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you. Signing off now.